On August 16, 1977, the world mourned the death of Elvis Presley. But what if I told you that before that fateful day, there was a woman, a nurse, a stranger who saw beyond the fame, the wealth, and the addiction, who came dangerously close to pulling him back from the brink? Her name was never in the headlines. Her love story with the king was erased from history. Today, we finally tell the truth. Elvis Presley stood alone in Graceland's bathroom at 3 a.m., staring at a reflection he no longer recognized. The mirror showed a man bloated by prescription medications, his once magnetic blue eyes now glazed and distant. By 1975, the king had swallowed thousands of pill-uppers to perform, downers to sleep, painkillers for a back that may or may not have truly ached. The drugs were prescribed by Dr. Nick Nicopolis, his personal physician, who seemed more interested in keeping his most famous patient sedated than healthy. Nobody knew the real Elvis anymore. Not his family. Not his entourage. The public saw the jumpsuit and the charisma during rare performances. But behind closed doors, he was a ghost haunting his own mansion. He'd gained over 100 pounds. He canceled tours. He couldn't remember lyrics to his own songs. The man who once electrified the world was now imprisoned by the very fame that created him. His ex-wife Priscilla had tried to warn him. His daughter Lisa Marie cried when she saw him. His mother, who had died in 1958, had always said, "Son, never let them change who you are." But Elvis had forgotten who he was. He existed in a pharmaceutical fog, surrounded by yes-men who profited from his decline. They called themselves the Memphis Mafia, a group of hangers-on who enabled every destructive behavior, every excess, every spiral downward. They weren't protecting the king. They were feeding off the dying body of a legend. What Elvis didn't know on that cold night in 1975 was that salvation was coming. It would arrive quietly, unexpectedly, through someone who didn't care about his fame or his money. Someone who saw Elvis not as the king, but as a broken man who still deserved to be loved. Her name was Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a nurse specialist who arrived at Graceland in early 1976 with a simple mandate: help manage Elvis's deteriorating health. She wasn't starstruck. She wasn't interested in his money or his connections. She was there because she was a professional, and what she saw when she first examined him broke her heart. Sarah was different from everyone else in Elvis's life. She didn't laugh at his jokes to keep her paycheck. She didn't nod along while he popped pills like candy. Instead, she did something radical. She told him the truth. His body was failing. His heart was struggling. If he continued on this path, he had maybe 5 years left. She said this not with judgment, but with genuine concern, as if she were speaking to a patient she'd known her whole life, not a stranger she'd just met. Elvis was furious at first. He wasn't used to anyone challenging him. But Sarah held her ground. She began a quiet revolution, documenting his medications, speaking with Dr. Nick, and slowly convincing Elvis to consider alternatives: therapy, exercise, genuine medical intervention instead of pharmaceutical escape. She worked late into the nights, sitting with him, listening to his fears about aging, irrelevance, and the crushing weight of expectations. For the first time in years, Elvis had someone who wasn't trying to use him. Sarah refused his advances with kindness. She rejected his lavish gifts. She simply showed up, day after day, and treated him like a human being worthy of care and respect. Within months, Elvis began to change. He lost weight. He started attending medical appointments seriously. He spoke about reducing his medication dependencies. He laughed, genuinely laughed, for the first time in a decade. The Memphis Mafia noticed, and they didn't like it. Sarah was a threat to their cushy lifestyle, their access to pills and parties, and the reflected glory of association with the king. By late 1976, Elvis had improved dramatically. His energy returned. He wanted to perform again. He talked about touring, about making new music, about reclaiming his life. Sarah believed in this redemption completely. She saw a man worth saving, and she was saving him. But powerful forces were working against them in the shadows. Dr. Nick felt his authority slipping away. The Memphis Mafia realized that a healthier Elvis meant they'd lose control of the castle and its resources. Even some family members, motivated by inheritance concerns and old resentments, began to whisper doubts about Sarah's influence. In early 1977, a conspiracy of silence formed. False rumors spread that Sarah was mismanaging his care, that she was pushing him too hard, that she was after his money. None of it was true, but in the world of the wealthy and famous, truth matters less than narrative control. Phone calls were made. Pressure was applied. Sarah found herself increasingly isolated. Her medical recommendations questioned, her motives scrutinized. Elvis, caught between the woman who loved him and the people he'd known his whole life, began to fracture. The stress of the conflict triggered old behaviors. Dr. Nick, seeing an opportunity to regain control, resumed prescribing aggressively. By spring 1977, the medications were back higher doses than ever. Elvis was caught in the middle, torn between his desire for health and his inability to completely sever ties with those who were killing him. Sarah fought hard. She begged Elvis to leave with her, to start fresh somewhere away from the toxicity. For a moment, he considered it. But he was trapped by love for his daughter, by loyalty to his employees, by the golden chains of Graceland. In July 1977, Sarah made the agonizing decision to leave. She couldn't watch him die in slow motion while powerful people conspired to keep him addicted. August 16, 1977. The day the world lost the king, the official cause was listed as a heart attack. But those who knew the truth understood that Elvis had died of a broken heart long before his body gave out. He died of neglect, of pharmaceutical addiction, of being surrounded by people who profited from his pain. In his final months without Sarah, Elvis spiraled completely. He stopped eating regularly. He barely slept. He was consuming upwards of 20 prescription medications daily. His doctor was now essentially an enabler, writing prescriptions without genuine medical oversight. His inner circle had successfully removed the one person who truly wanted him to love. Sarah received the news while working at a hospital in Tennessee. She wept for hours, not for the loss of a legend, but for the loss of a man she'd come to love, the real Elvis, the vulnerable, searching soul she'd glimpsed during those months when redemption seemed possible. She kept a newspaper clipping of his death, along with a letter she'd written but never sent, locked away for decades. In that letter, she wrote, "I know you're gone now, and I know I couldn't save you. But for a few months, you let me try. You were brave enough to consider becoming more than the king. You are becoming human again. That was worth everything to me, and I hope somewhere you knew that." Elvis Presley died at 42, surrounded by everything except what he truly needed: genuine love, authentic connection, and someone willing to fight for his life against all odds. The woman who offered all three had been systematically driven away by those who benefited from his demise. It's the tragedy that never made the headlines, the love story that history forgot. What if Elvis had chosen differently? What if he'd left Graceland, left the Memphis Mafia, left the pills, and walked away with Sarah into a life of quiet authenticity? What if redemption had been allowed to complete? We'll never know. But this story isn't really about Elvis. It's about all of us. How many people in your life are slowly self-destructing, surrounded by enablers instead of healers? How many Sarahs do we push away because they threaten the comfortable dysfunction we've constructed? The king is gone, but his lesson remains. Love isn't powerful enough if we're not brave enough to accept it. Share this story. Debate it. Ask yourself, would you have been a Sarah, or would you have been part of the mafia? Comment below. The world is waiting to hear your truth.